In a 1998 commencement address at Portland State University, President Bill Clinton highlighted the ongoing impact of immigrants coming to the United States in saying, "More than any other nation on earth, America has constantly drawn strength and spirit from wave after wave of immigrants. In each generation, they have proved to be the most restless, the most adventurous, the most innovative, the most industrious of people." The United States is the most populous immigrant country in the world. Like many countries in the Americas and Australia, most residents are either immigrants or descendants of immigrants. The United States' culture, institutions, and population are all the products of 5 centuries of immigration. The history of the world is a story of constant movement. Migration is the permanent or semi-permanent relocation of people from one place to another. Since the first humans lived in Eastern Africa, people have been on the move. Early humans were very mobile, searching for nuts, seeds, and fruits to eat, and for animals to hunt. As agriculture and urban settlements developed, people began to settle down. However, they continued to move from rural to urban areas and from settlement to settlement. Most people who move do so in search of a better life. They are a part of a voluntary migration, a movement that's made by choice. The choice usually combines a decision to move away from someplace with a decision to move towards someplace else. People generally decide to move because of push factors, which are negative circumstances, events, or conditions that are present in the place that they currently live. Once migrants decide that they're going to leave, they usually choose a destination that's based on its positive conditions and circumstances, or pull factors. The most common reason people migrate is that they lack jobs and economic opportunities. These migrants go to areas offering greater economic opportunities. People will often migrate when they experience discrimination and persecution because of their ethnicity, race, gender, or religion, and they move to locations where they can practice their culture safely. People are often influenced by kinship links or ties with relatives who have already settled in a place. People who oppose the policies of a government often migrate because they face persecution, arrest, and discrimination. Such political migrants move to countries that support their political views or will offer them asylum, which is a protection from the danger they face in their home country. People also migrate to escape harm from natural disasters, drought, and other unfavorable environmental conditions. Such migrants move to areas that are not under the same environmental stresses. Some countries are unbalanced demographically. For example, in the case of a gender imbalance, young adults may not find someone to marry. If the population's too young, the country may eventually become overpopulated. Geographer William Zielinski made a connection between migration patterns and the demographic transition model. His model explains that countries in stage 2 and stage 3 of the demographic transition model will experience rapid population growth and overcrowding. And this overcrowding limits the economic opportunities of the people and acts as a push factor. Thus, they migrate to less crowded stage 4 or 5 countries which offer greater economic opportunities with growing economies and aging populations. Migration, though, does consist of more than just push and pull factors. Migrants often encounter intervening obstacles or barriers that make reaching their desired destination more difficult. These obstacles might be economic, social, political, or environmental. An example of an economic obstacle might be that a migrant lacks enough money to reach a destination. A social obstacle might be that a migrant gets married to someone who lives along the migration route and then settles in that person's community. An example of a political obstacle might be that a migrant cannot get a visa that's needed to enter a country. And then finally, an environmental example might be that a migrant cannot cross the sea, desert, or a mountain range. In the 1880s, German geographer E.G. Ravenstein noticed 8 patterns, or laws, about migration tendencies, patterns, and demographics. And some have been modified, but they still form the basis for migration theory. Migrants travel only a short distance. The further apart 2 places are, the less likely it is that people will migrate between those places. Ravenstein called this phenomenon distance decay. In the 1960s, geographers expanded this to time distance decay, the idea that things near each other are more closely connected than things that are far apart. Migrants traveling long distances usually settle in large urban areas. This is mainly because migrants believe that a larger city will have more opportunities than a smaller city. Most migration occurs through steppe migration, a process in which migrants reach their eventual destination through a series of smaller moves. For example, in a common pattern in rural to urban migration, a migrant from a small town is most likely to move first to a larger town, later to a small city, and finally to a large city. Most migration in history has been from rural to urban areas. Because of the Industrial Revolution, rural areas needed fewer laborers on farms, and cities needed more people to work, first in factories and then in offices. This rural to urban movement remains common today. It includes migration both within countries, such as rural residents of India moving to Indian cities such as Mumbai, and between countries, rural residents of Syria moving to cities in Germany. Each migration flow produces a movement in the opposite direction, called counter-migration. For example, in the 1990s and early 2000s, as many Mexican migrants were moving to the United States, a counter-migration of people moved from the United States to Mexico. Some were a part of a return migration, immigrants moving back to their former home. Others were retirees from the United States who had never lived in Mexico but were attracted by its warm weather and lower cost of living. One result of counter-migration are neighborhoods of former U.S. residents now living scattered throughout Mexico. Today, about 1 million retired U.S. citizens live in Mexico. Most migrants are younger adults, between the ages of 20 and 45. People in that age group are usually not as established with jobs, homes, and family as older groups are, so they're more likely to move to improve their fortunes. Most international migrants are young males, while more internal migrants are female. Men are more likely to move outside of the country looking for work. For example, several countries in the Middle East have guest worker programs where they recruit young men from South and Southeast Asia to work in the oil and construction industries. Women are more likely to move within a country. One reason is that many women living in traditional societies move in with their husbands and their husbands' families.